It's funny how love hides best where it shouldn't exist. And cruelly, it always shows up when you're finally ready to walk away. That's exactly what happened to me and Ethan. He was my best friend, my person, my anchor in this messy, loud American town where everyone knew everyone's business. For years, we were inseparable at night drives, shared coffee mugs, and endless laughter echoing through our small apartment in Portland. People always asked if we were together. He'd laugh, throw an arm over my shoulder, and say, "Nah, he's just my roommate. Just my roommate." The words used to sting a little. Okay, a lot. But I smiled anyway, because having him in my life in any way was better than not having him at all. Until the night I decided to leave. The living room was a battlefield of cardboard boxes and taped-up memories. My hands trembled as I folded the last of my shirts, each one holding a ghost of his laughter, his cologne, his warmth. The apartment felt emptier with every box sealed shut. Ethan wasn't supposed to come home early. He was at the bar with his friend same as always, pretending to be the carefree guy who didn't care about anything deeper than the next game night. But fate's cruel like that. The door opened, and there he was standing in the doorway, drunk on confusion and something rawer than alcohol. His eyes darted to the boxes, then to me. "What the hell are you doing?" I didn't answer right away. My throat tightened. "I got the job in Seattle," I said softly. "I'm moving next week." He stared at me like I just said I was dying. Moving? Without telling me? I just did. It was meant to sound strong, but my voice cracked halfway through. For a moment, silence filled the air, thick and suffocating. Then he laughed, sharp and bitter. "So that's it? You're just gonna walk out?" "I can't stay here forever, Ethan," I whispered. "Not like this." "Like what?" he snapped, stepping closer. I looked at him, then the man who had unknowingly broken my heart piece by piece with every careless smile. Every "we're just friends." Every fleeting touch that meant everything to me. "Like your friend who keeps pretending it doesn't hurt." The words hit him like a punch. His breath hitched. "Pretending what doesn't hurt?" "Being around you," I said, forcing myself to meet his eyes. "Loving you and knowing you'll never love me back." For the first time, Ethan didn't have a smart comeback. His jaw tightened, his hands clenched, and his eyes, God, those eyes looked like they were on fire. He turned away, raking his fingers through his hair, muttering something I couldn't hear. Then suddenly, he crossed the room, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me closer. "Stop," he said. His voice was shaking. "Just stop talking like that." I froze. His breath brushed my cheek. "Why?" I asked, barely a whisper. "Because you're wrong." He cupped my face, and before I could process what was happening, his lips crashed into mine, messy, desperate, real. For a heartbeat, the world stopped spinning. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were glistening. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "Not to Seattle, not to anyone. You said we were just friends," I managed to say, trembling. "I lied." His voice broke. "I was scared." And just like that, all the walls I'd built, all the nights I'd spent convincing myself he didn't love me shattered. But love isn't a fairy tale, not here. Not for two men in a town that still looks at you differently when you hold hands at the diner. The days that followed were messy, confusing, beautiful. He didn't magically become someone else overnight. Ethan was still Ethan, loud, sarcastic, impulsive, but he was mine now. The first time he reached for my hand in public, I felt his fingers tremble. But he didn't let go. We walked past the same neighbors who used to smile too politely, the same coworkers who whispered too loudly. And yet, for once, none of it mattered. He looked at me, his hand squeezing mine tighter. "They can think what they want," he said. "I just don't care anymore." And maybe that's what love really isn't, grand gestures. Not perfect timing, but the quiet courage to choose each other anyway. But not every day was easy. Sometimes, he'd wake up in the middle of the night, breathing hard from a nightmare I couldn't fix. He'd roll over, touch my arm, and whisper, "You're still here, right?" And I'd smile, kiss his forehead, and say, "Always," because for all the chaos, for all the fear, Wade found something real. something worth fighting for. Still, part of me always wondered if I hadn't packed that night, would he have ever told me how he felt? Maybe not. Maybe love needed the threat of loss to finally speak. The morning I was supposed to leave for Seattle, the apartment looked almost the same, boxes still everywhere, coffee still brewing. Except this time, Ethan was the one holding the suitcase. He'd taken the week off, said he wanted to help me settle in. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. He wasn't letting me go again. We drove in silence for most of the way, the highway stretching endlessly beneath a sky that looked like a new beginning. At one point, he reached over, lacing our fingers together, and said, "You know, I still don't know how to do this." "Do what?" I asked. "Love you the way you deserve," he said quietly. "But I'm trying." I smiled. That's all I ever wanted. That night, as we unpacked the first box in my new apartment, I found a small Polaroid hidden between my books. It was us, laughing on the roof of our old place, sunset behind us. On the back, he'd written, "You were never just my friend." And that's when I realized something simple but profound. Sometimes, love doesn't arrive in perfect timing or words, it arrives in chaos, in heartbreak, in the moment someone finally refuses to let you walk away. The move to Seattle was supposed to be a clean slate. New city, new job, new version of Masamion who didn't spend nights lying awake wondering what Ethan was thinking in the next room. Except now, he was right there beside me. And that changed everything. The first few weeks were messy in the way all new beginnings are. Boxes still cluttered the apartment. Our furniture was a mismatched mix of old and new, and the water heater groaned like an old man every time we showered. But somehow I loved it. Every morning, I'd wake up to find Ethan already up, hair messy, shirtless, making terrible coffee and humming some off-key tune. He'd glance over, grin that stupid grin that made my chest hurt, and say, "Morning trouble." I'd roll my eyes, pretending not to melt. "You're the one who almost burned the coffee pot again." He'd laugh and pull me in by the waist, his lips brushing my temple. "Guess you'll just have to keep me around to make sure I don't ruin breakfast." And God, I wanted to keep him around forever. Still, love isn't all sunlight and laughter. Some nights, the silence between us grew too loud. Ethan wasn't used to talking about feelings. He'd never had to. Growing up in a small Oregon town with a father who believed men shouldn't cry, he'd built walls around his heart so high even he couldn't see over them. Sometimes, when I reached for his hand, he'd flinch just slightly, barely noticeable, but enough for me to feel it. Once I asked him about it. We were sitting on the couch, half watching a movie neither of us cared about. His head rested on my shoulder, my fingers tracing idle patterns on his arm. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked quietly. "Regret what?" "This. Us." He lifted his head, frowning. "Why would I?" "I don't know," I admitted. "You used to care a lot about what people thought." He hesitated, his eyes dark. "I still do sometimes, but not enough to lose you." It should have been comforting. It was, in a way. But beneath his words, I sensed something else, a quiet fear that hadn't gone away. That fear came crashing down one Saturday morning. We were out at a small diner near Pike Place Market, holding hands under the table like high schoolers. It was early, quiet, the kind of morning that smelled like coffee and rain. The waitress smiled at us, polite but distant. But then, a group of guys at the counter started whispering, laughing. One of them, a big guy in a baseball cap, muttered something just loud enough for us to hear. Ethan froze. I squeezed his hand. "Hey, ignore it." But he pulled away, his jaw tightening. "Let's just go." "Ethan," I said, "let's go." He threw a few bills on the table and stormed out. I followed, my heart sinking. Outside, the drizzle had turned into steady rain. He stood there on the sidewalk, shoulders tense, eyes burning with anger he didn't know where to put. "Why'd you have to do that?" he snapped. "Do what?" "Hold my hand like that, in public." I blinked, stunned. "You kissed me in front of our neighbors last week." "That's different," he said, running a hand through his hair. This was what?" I cut in. "Too real. The words hung between us like thunder. He didn't answer, just stared at the wet pavement, jaw clenched, rain dripping from his hair. "Ethan," I said softly, "you don't have to be ashamed of us." "I'm not," he whispered. "I'm just scared." He looked up, eyes glistening. "Yeah, I guess I am." I took a step closer, ignoring the rain soaking through my jacket. "I get it, but I'm scared too. I just don't let it stop me from loving you." He looked at me, then really looked, and something in him cracked open. He stepped forward, resting his forehead against mine. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You deserve better than my fear." I smiled through the rain. "Then stop running from it. Run with me instead." That night he didn't sleep. Neither did I. We stayed up talking until dawn, the sky outside turning from gray to gold. He told me about his childhood, how his father never hugged him, how his first crush had been a boy from his basketball team, how he'd learned to swallow every part of himself that didn't fit into the mold of what a man should be. "I spent years trying to be someone people would accept," he said, voice trembling. "And then you came along, and suddenly, I wanted to be someone you would love." "You already are," I whispered. He laughed softly, that sad kind of laugh that hides tears. "You make it sound so easy." "It's not," I admitted, "but it's worth it." He reached over, brushing his thumb along my jaw. "You always say the right things." "No," I said. "I just say what's true." And in that moment, with dawn breaking through the blinds and his fingers tracing warmth into my skin, I knew this was love in its rawest form. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Weeks turned into months. Life settled into a rhythm: work, dinners, late-night walks by the waterfront. Seattle became ours slowly but surely. He started opening up more. He'd come to my office parties, laugh with my coworkers, even introduce me to his new friends as his boyfriend. The first time he said it out loud, I almost cried. We were at a housewarming party, a mix of people who didn't know our story. Someone asked how we met. Ethan grinned, wrapping an arm around me. "He was my roommate," he said. "Now he's my reason for getting out of bed." Everyone laughed, but I saw the truth in his eyes. Later that night, when we got home, I asked, "Did you mean that?" He nodded. "Every word." And for a while, everything was perfect. Then life, as always, decided to test us. Started with a phone call. Ethan's father had a heart attack. Minor, but serious enough to bring back everything he'd been running from. He hadn't spoken to his family in over 3 years. They knew about him, about us, but they never accepted it. His mother sent polite texts, his father sent silence. Now, faced with mortality, he didn't know what to do. "I should go see him," he said one night, pacing the living room. "Then go," I said. He looked at me, uncertain. "You think that's a good idea?" "I think you'll regret it if you don't." He nodded slowly. "Will you come with me?" I froze for half a second. Meeting his parents wasn't exactly on my dream list, especially not under those circumstances. But the look in his eyes, nervous, pleading, made the choice for me. Of course. The drive back to Oregon was quiet, tense. When we pulled up to his family's house, it felt like stepping into another world. The same white porch, the same chipped mailbox, the same American flag fluttering in the yard. His mother opened the door first. She looked older, smaller somehow. Her eyes flickered between us, and for a long, painful second, I thought she might shut the door again. But she didn't. "Come in," she said softly. Ethan's father was in the living room, pale but alive, hooked up to an oxygen machine. His eyes landed on Ethan, then shifted to me. No greeting, no smile, just silence. Ethan cleared his throat. "Hey, Dad." His father didn't answer. Minutes stretched into hours. Conversations about weather and doctors and nothing that mattered. His mother tried to fill the gaps, but the weight in the air was unbearable. When Ethan finally stepped outside to get some air, his father turned to me. "So," he said, his voice rough, "you're the one." I swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." He studied me for a long moment. "You don't look like what I expected." I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't ask. You love my son? He asked. With everything I have. He nodded once, slowly. Then make sure he doesn't lose himself trying to be what you need. It wasn't acceptance. Not quite. But it wasn't rejection either. When Ethan came back in, his father reached out hesitantly and placed a hand on his shoulder. Take care of yourself, son. That was it. But it was more than he'd ever said before. On the drive back, Ethan was quiet, staring out at the endless stretch of highway. Finally, he said, I think that's the closest he'll ever get to saying he's sorry. Maybe, I said. But it's a start. He reached over, took my hand, and smiled faintly. You always know how to find hope in everything. That's because you taught me how to stop being afraid of it. That night, we stopped at a roadside motel, one of those old, neon-lit places that smelled faintly of rain and coffee. The room was small, the bed creaked, but it felt perfect. He lay beside me, tracing circles on my chest. You ever think about the future? All the time. He smiled. What do you see? I turned toward him. You. Always you. He laughed softly. That's corny as hell. Maybe. But it's true. He leaned in, kissed me slow, deep, lingering. Then I guess I'll stick around to see if you're right. And just like that, somewhere between Oregon and Seattle, between old wounds and new beginnings, we found peace, not the kind that means everything's perfect, but the kind that means we're finally brave enough to keep trying. It's strange how love can make ordinary moments feel infinite. Months passed after the trip to Oregon. Ethan and I fell back into our Seattle rhythm, late mornings, spontaneous road trips, nights spent dancing in the kitchen to songs neither of us really liked. But something was different now. Lighter, stronger. He wasn't hiding anymore. He'd started talking about the future, our future. It began with small things. New furniture, a dog, maybe a second bedroom for guests. Then one night, out of nowhere, he said, What do you think about buying a house together? I laughed, thinking he was joking. But he wasn't. He looked at me, serious, his thumb brushing mine. I want something that's ours. Something that says I'm not running anymore. And in that moment, I realized Ethan wasn't just staying. He was choosing to stay. We found a small house on the edge of the city, near a quiet lake surrounded by pine trees. It wasn't fancy, but it felt right, the kind of place where love could grow roots. The day we moved in, the sun poured through the windows, and boxes filled every corner. Ethan stood in the doorway, hands on his hips, grinning like a kid on Christmas. This is it, he said. Our chaos. I smiled, setting down the last box. Our beginning. We didn't have furniture yet. Just a mattress on the floor, a coffee maker, and each other. That night, we lay under a blanket of fairy lights strung across the window, listening to the wind brushing against the glass. Ethan turned to me, his expression softer than I'd ever seen. You know what scares me the most? What? That someday I'll wake up and think all of this was a dream. I reached out, touching his face. Then I'll keep reminding you it's real. He smiled, eyes glistening. You really are the best thing that ever happened to me. Kissed him, slow and sure. And you're the reason I never gave up on love. Life, as always, wasn't without storms. There were fights over work, over bills, over stupid things like who forgot to buy milk. But even in those moments, I never doubted him. Because love wasn't about never fighting, it was about always coming back after. One night, after a long argument about something neither of us remembered the next morning, he slipped into bed beside me and whispered, I don't ever want to go to sleep angry again. I turned toward him, smiling in the dark. Then kiss me goodnight before we forget why we fought. And he did. A year later, on a crisp autumn evening, Ethan surprised me. We were at the lake near our house, the same spot we visited almost every weekend. The water shimmered under the fading sun, trees painting the horizon in orange and gold. He handed me a mug of coffee, then stood awkwardly, fidgeting like he was about to confess something. Okay, I said, amused. What's going on? He exhaled, then smiled nervously. You remember when we first met? I laughed. You mean when you spilled beer on my laptop and tried to fix it with a hairdryer? Yeah, that one. He grinned. You yelled at me for 10 straight minutes. I still should, I teased. He stepped closer. That was the day everything changed for me. I just didn't know it yet. I blinked, heart pounding. His voice had that tremor, the same one he had the night he first said he loved me. Ethan. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, simple ring. Silver, nothing fancy, just honest, like him. I don't have a speech, he said softly. I don't have some grand plan or perfect words. I just know that every time I look at you, I see home. My breath caught. He smiled, eyes wet. So, will you keep being my home? Forever. For a moment, the world blurred. The lake, the sky, the trees, all of it disappeared. There was only him. I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks. Yes. He let out a shaky laugh of relief, sliding the ring onto my finger. Then he kissed me deep and trembling, like a promise sealed in the wind. The world seemed to hold its breath around us. The lake rippled softly. The last rays of sunlight wrapped us in gold. And for the first time in forever, I felt completely, utterly safe. That night, back in our house, we danced in the living room with no music. Just quiet laughter and the soft creak of floorboards. Ethan whispered against my ear, "You think we'll make it?" I leaned into him. "We already have." Years later, when people ask how we met, we always laugh and say, "He was my roommate." But the truth is, he was so much more. He was the boy who taught me that love isn't always gentle. It can be terrifying, chaotic, and hard. But if you're lucky, it's also the one thing that saves you. We built a life out of second chances and small moments, burnt coffee, road trips, rainy mornings, and quiet forgiveness. And sometimes, when the world outside feels too heavy, we still drive down to that same lake, sit in silence, and watch the water move. He always takes my hand first. Always. Because once upon a time, he couldn't. And now, he never forgets to. Love didn't change who we were, it revealed who we could be. And maybe that's all any of us are really looking for. Someone who doesn't just see us, but stays anyway. Someone who says, "You were never just my friend," and means it. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.